We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
With Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. This is Red Voice Media, and we're going to kick it off with the Bohemian Grove today. Not a lot out there. You know, you thought that there was a ton of censorship or suppression regarding the Bilderberg Group. You'd be correct. There was more coverage of the Bilderberg Group this year than Bohemian Grove perhaps the last 3 years combined. Almost none. I remember I did a show on it last year. Nothing doing. Just nothing out there on it. Even this year, I'm not even sure of the dates at all. I've got one article here from the Press Democrat. Now, what's funny is the media went into a frenzy around April of this year with that ProPublica report that was essentially an attempt to take down Clarence Thomas, or if not take down Clarence Thomas himself, make a case for packing the Supreme Court, both of which I think are extremely dangerous. That doesn't mean I love Clarence Thomas. I do not. I do think he's a lot better than most on the Supreme Court. I think he has his issues. I also don't like clubs or the greatest men's party on earth, right? I don't like these type of things, especially when they're associated not just with the owl up there, but you'll see a nice little gentleman right down there with the cloven hooves. With the cloven hooves, that's Pan. That's Pan worship. All right, and Pan is very much one of these occultic, I wouldn't say predecessors to Satan, but they're interchangeable, right? I'll never forget watching, it was very, very old. It might have been Sally Jesse Raphael, it might have been Phil Donahue, I don't know. Tex Mars was on it, and Tex had his issues. Tex even attacked me for some time. And I remember Tex had attacked me and attacked Loose Change, and then he came into the InfoWars offices. And you could just tell he didn't like me for some reason. Now, I know a lot of people out there are going to say, well, Tex was an anti-Semite. And certainly in a lot of his books, at the very end, he would target at least the religion of Judaism and then certain individuals. I forget what his Monuments book was. Those books, by the way, are extremely expensive now because they're very well researched. Okay, whether you agree with everything Tex has to say, which I do not. The stuff on the occult is very good. The stuff on Masonry is very good. I remember I watched something he had put out years and years and years ago where he had alleged that the head of the Central Intelligence Agency at the time was a separate person. I don't know that he ever fleshed that out. I think we all make mistakes. But one of the things I think that he was correct on was kind of that interchangeability of Pan, Lucifer, Satan, whatever you want, Beelzebub, the devil, mischief, those types of things. It's definitely there. And when I went to the Hearst Castle, again, many, many moons ago, on an InfoWars trip, one I'll never forget. I'll never forget that trip out in California for about a week with Rob Dew and then the other Jason, who didn't last long, I guess, at InfoWars, which wasn't really a shock to me. He was just kind of there for a job. But we went to places like the Botanical Gardens. We went into the Redwood Forest in Sonoma with one of the greatest whistleblowers / researchers / activists against geoengineering there ever was. One of the sweetest ladies I ever met on several occasions, Rosalind Peterson. And I still feel blessed just for that experience. But really the cherry on top was when we went somewhere we didn't really plan on going. We had a few days left. We were up in the mountains. I think it was before we actually got up to Sonoma. But we were ahead of schedule. We were there for a week. And we decided we were going to go to the Hearst Castle. Now, for those that don't know about Hearst Publications, look into yellow journalism. This, was a time when you had the development, we would talk about Operation Mockingbird a lot. We talk about Central Intelligence Agency and spook influence in our media. And even on the ride out to New York this past weekend, it was on full display when I was listening to Annie Jacobson's work. And Annie Jacobson was discussing I guess you would talk about the origin story of brainwashing and how it became in the public arena and really a term of pop culture, I would say. And that came from the Central Intelligence Agency using journalists long before Mockingbird. So let me repeat that for you. The Central Intelligence Agency came up with the term brainwashing that did not exist. They then distributed it through a single media outlet who was a journalist, who had not been revealed to be working as a CIA asset. And it was to get the public to believe that the evil communists, no matter where they lie, were trying to brainwash American soldiers, implant ideas that were false, and then really obfuscate the fact that we would be attempting the same types of things, or whether or not that had actually taken place. Because it was based in a story of Korean war veterans that had been captured, Colonel Schwab among them. And Schwab had basically come out and accused the United States of breaking the Geneva Conventions and using all types of biological warfare, named names, places within the Korean War. And that was a big naughty, no. So in order to either make damage control on the story or counter the story, if indeed it was not true, as the official position of the U.S. government to this day is that it is not true, they were going to go with mindicide or mendicide. And they thought that was too much. They thought that the American public, if they thought of this thing like a genocide, it would be too much. So they came up with the term brainwashing. That's how it's done. That's really how the media acts as a mouthpiece. So Hearst, getting back to him, father of yellow journalism. Hearst is also, William Hearst in particular, the person that is supposedly depicted in Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. They actually use the same infamous line in which they say that you give me the pictures and I'll give you the story. So manipulation of the media even then. And there were 3 tours that you could take. I think we took the longest one, but you still missed so much. And if you've never been to Hearst Castle, put it on the list. Put it on. I encourage. There's something about history in the flesh, and not just in a museum, right? Great museums are great, and obviously this is kind of constructed as one now, but it shows. I mean, how it's not constructed is when you go into the pool room, right? Let me see if I can bring up the pool room. Okay, Hearst Castle pool. We'll do it live. Yeah, there's a couple of them. Whew. Because there's the outdoor pool, and I think that Lady Gaga shot one of her videos out here. And this in particular, there's a statue. It's like a block, like a marble block. Let's go to images. And it has Pan on it. In fact, I think that we can bring it up somewhere. So this is Hearst Castle, right? And it's got like very, very much these statues based in Greek mythology, et cetera, et cetera. But then the room itself, inside, is just jaw-dropping. And everywhere, even on the ceilings, you have paintings and things of I would say, occultic slash, I guess, Greek mythology type stuff. Let's see if we can get Pan up there. Castle, pool, Pan. Let's see if we can actually get Pan. Is that Pan? No, that's not the Pan. But Pan, I assure you, Pan is there, 100%. And on full display. That's not Pan. And I wonder if I can... Hearst Castle, let's take the pool out. Let's do the Pan. In fact, it's also crawling with owls. I just want to point that out. Let's see. Is that it right there? No, that's Enchanted Hill. But that might be at Hearst Castle as well. Okay, and this is certainly the 6 great castles of SoCal. It really shows you that these people were into that sort of thing. Okay, whether they believe it on a religious level, it almost doesn't matter, because what concerns me the most about the Bohemian Club is that they are a sect of the power elite. And the vast majority of these people, I would say, pose as Christian conservatives. The hillbilly part, so they all have these encampments. It's a large camp. The hillbilly part, that's the Bush clan. All right, the Bushes are there. Reagan, Eisenhower. In fact, Eisenhower gave his first big speech to the establishment at the Bohemian Grove. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. That's where they developed. And I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. I haven't gotten out to a Christopher Nolan film in a long time. I go to the movies maybe 2-3 times a year. Went to see Sound of Freedom. I intend to go see Oppenheimer. I want to know whether or not they're historically accurate and they recruit Oppenheimer at the Bohemian Club, not necessarily the Grove, but then take him into the Grove, because it was plans at the Grove that hatched the Manhattan Project in the first place. Just like you have an FBI and a CIA, in other words, intelligence apparatuses post-World War II, that really come out of not only the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, but this network, this hive, if you will, of Harvard and Yale and Princeton elites, and with Yale in particular, the secret society Skull and Bones, one of the secret societies at the apex of that Anglo-American power structure. And the spooks are celebrated. I almost brought my Bohemian Grove annals up here, but the stack is like this high. I'm going to read a little bit of the Greatest Men's Party on Earth, but also this book also very important. The Long Ago and the Later On, and you'll notice the owl boat, right? Well, the owl wasn't always there. You see, if you look at the thumbnail here, it used to be a Buddha, but that guy who's sitting second row, not quite in the front, That's George Bromley. And right here is this story. You want to learn more about this story, the owl, and more? Well, stick around. We got to go to a word from our sponsor, redvoicemedia.com/uncensored for the 2 extra premiums. We'll be back after this.
We interrupt today's programming to bring unfortunate news. Biden's dangerous plan for a digital dollar is underway. Don't be fooled. It won't benefit you. So take action now. The Federal Reserve's phased deployment of FedNow began on July 1st, 2023. Be prepared. This may catch many off guard and put your hard-earned assets in jeopardy. But here's the good news. There's a simple legal tax loophole to opt out of the digital dollar. Speak to someone at American Alternative Assets for a free wealth protection guide and discover how to safeguard your wealth with gold and silver IRAs against a failing dollar and volatile markets. Dial 833, the number 2 USA Gold. Yes, call now. 833-287-2465. This invaluable guide provides precise steps to transfer your IRA or 401k into precious metals without any tax consequences. Don't let Biden force you into using the government's new digital dollar. Call 833, the number 2 USA Gold. Yes, call now. 833-287-2465. Act swiftly. 833-287-2465.
Thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. This is the book, The Long Ago and the Later On. It actually comes in 2 separate colors. You can get the blue copy or the red. They are somewhat rare. However, you can get the PDF file. What I love about the copy that I got, okay, printed in 1904. Okay, this book's about 120 years old, legit. It's also got, and I'm going to read this, by the way. This is loose, but you see how it actually stained the paper. Bohemians honor best loved man. This guy had a huge impact on the Grove, on the cremation of care, and on the bringing of Eastern mysticism to the West. This guy traveled to China, okay, in this book, amongst many other places. Let me just read this. Bohemians honor best loved man. And by the way, again, this book is incredibly old. There's Bromley right there. And you see this right here. Okay? Or recollections of 80 years. And of course he dedicates it to the Bohemian Club right there. The Long Ago and the Later On dedicated to the Bohemian Club by the author right here. This is San Francisco, December of 1904. And copyright 1904 by Bromley himself. Okay? So this book right here, let's read what they have to say about him, really lets you in on how, in the very beginning of this, it was artisans and bohemians and a club that reached back into the late 1800s, I believe 1872. And it's really overtaken by the political and social elite at the time in California on the coastline. And the coastline's just so important in our history, California and New York in particular. Let me read this for you. The body of Uncle George T. Bromley of the Bohemian Club, yes, they always called him Uncle, he was the man, called before his death the best loved man in San Francisco. He's the best loved man. Was laid to his final resting place in Woodlawn Cemetery yesterday afternoon. Services at the Woodlawn Chapel were attended by relatives and by many of the older members of the Bohemian Club, with whom Bromley was intimately associated for many years. His death occurred June 20th, 1909, and his body was temporarily placed in a receiving vault. John A. Britton, one of the officers of the Bohemian Club, was chairman of the committee in charge of the ceremonies. Now, I want you to think about that. He dies 5 years later and was of such importance to whoever had this book, okay, whoever had the book, that they put his obituary in here. I mean, a real cutout. Let's see. One of the most remarkable and picturesque careers of any Westerner was lived by Bromley. It was a career that carried him over 7 seas and into many of the kingdoms of the earth. And when the active phase of his life was past, he was used to sit in a corner of the Bohemian Club, of which he was high priest for a quarter of a century. He's their high priest for 25 years. High priest for a quarter of a century. Oh, it's a Christian conservative club. Oh, okay. All right. I'm sure that's what he was preaching. And he tells rare stories and reminiscences. In his 87 years, the beloved clubman wrote a book called The Long Ago and the Later On. And it was dedicated to the Bohemian Club. The narrative told the story of his birth in Connecticut in 1817, of his experience at sea when 14 on a sealer voyage to South Africa. Queen Victoria was crowned while he was there. And that does it for that little excerpt. But it also had one of these bad boys in here. Who knows how old this was? Obviously, it says 1954 on it. So someone must have stepped in. I'm very lucky to have this book. Again, you can read it yourself. It's on, I believe, archive.org, among other places. And a great read. This one is actually a little bit pricier, okay? And the reason it's pricier, other than the fact it's a hard copy, etc., is because it gives more. I got this. I can't even believe it, but it used to be in a library in Illinois, Decatur, Illinois. I bought this while I was still in New York. I got a great price on it. Can't really find it for under $150. Probably worth it. Not sure if you can get this in PDF format. But it tells the tale of John Vandersea, who actually, and it's funny because I believe Bobby Kennedy is mentioned in here. This is 1974. Actually got access into the Grove. Okay? Actually got access into the Grove and was able to write a book on it. And the first ones is Owls and Other Aircraft. It's the first thing. And I mean, Wall Street and Shangri-La. Notice the bomb is a chapter. That's chapter 9. Oh, look at that. Redwood and Hollywood. Chapter 8. Let's just go first to Owls and Other Aircraft. We'll start there. Little reading time. Can we get the thumbs up, by the way? Thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Lost a couple hundred subscribers over on YouTube over the last couple of months. I do want to remind everybody the second hour available at rvmrumble.com. That's rvmrumble.com. But we could always use the support across platforms. There is a small airport in Sonoma County, California, that for 3 consecutive weekends each year is unlike any other airport on Earth. On these weekends, usually beginning on a Thursday in mid-July, so this is probably going on right now. Probably started last week. Hard to tell. There's no real reporting on it. We're going to read that Press Democrat article in a minute. On these weekends, usually beginning on a Thursday in mid-July, corporate jets, smooth Lears, and Lockheed Jetstars. Oh, Lockheed Martin. We love Lockheed Martin. We love Raytheon. I love defense contractors. They're the best. I love RAND for research and development. Can't get enough. Drop out of the parched sky at intervals like seasonal gusts of expensive wind and come shrieking over the brown infelled grass. Reducing by bystanding Pipers and Cessnas to work machines, dray planes, and the distant firefighting Barrett bombers to shadowy outsized prehistoric beasts. It is a scene out of Ian Fleming. Okay, Ian Fleming, by the way, the guy that brought you what? 007. Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred. That was awful because that wasn't a Connery right there. 10, 12, 14 corporate jets lining the runways like units of a millionaire squadron. Men, almost always 50 years old or older, in expensive suits or sports clothes, stepping down ramps, carrying suitcases, bending into station wagons, pulled into the apron, or walking briskly through quivering asphalt, heat, and concrete, glare into the terminal and out the other side, where, After handing their luggage to a chauffeur or a cab driver or climbing behind the wheel of a complimentary car, they extend the glide in which they have arrived. Now, what's really interesting about this, and I want to show that, is that even right now, and this is something that was in the news about a month ago after the Clarence Thomas stuff, a Shatley club in California recently associated with Clarence Thomas is being sued for multiple labor violations. Here's what the secret retreat is known for. Bum, bum, bum. And it's an all-male staff. It's an all-male club. Sometimes they like to have, I don't know, gay porn stars like Chad Savage back in, I think, 2007, 2008 it was reported, service them at the Grove. One of the more famous clips that I do play of the Bohemian Club, and this is a report from either the 70s or the 80s, clearly the worker that is being interviewed about the club starts talking about a stunt. They like to pull stunts. He's clearly a homosexual. I'm just pointing that out. So a lot of these guys go there not only to party, but engage in homosexual activity that they hide from the public, and it compromises them because, again, they present themselves as Christian conservatives. That's not real, okay? It's funny. Last year, I was in, I believe it was right around the New York one, New York time, and I was interviewing Clay Clark outside of an ice cream stand. That's where we were all meeting up for the Thursday before, doing like 10 minutes. And I brought up the Bohemian Grove, and he even kind of took a step back and laughed. Clay, I'm not saying Clay goes to the Grove or anything like that, but Clay associates with people that are up in that level where they attend the Grove. I'm sure of it. Like, you have to ask yourself, for instance, I got this clip of Mitt Romney talking about hot dogs today. Oh, Mitt Romney loves hot dogs. It's hot dog day. It's his favorite meat. He loves them on buns. He loves them off of buns. Okay? Romney's the type of guy, the establishment type of guy that would go to something like this. Now, not all of them spend the 2+ weeks there. Some of them are just there for the meetings, right? Some of them are just there for like the ceremonies or the plays. And the plays are legit. They dress in drag because there are no women. That's something that you can tell that they're used to doing. You can even see they're groomed to do it at a young age. It's in the film with Robert De Niro and Matt Damon. It's illustrated actually rather well. The Good Shepherd. And in the scene where Matt Damon is tapped for Skull and Bones, again, I told you how Skull and Bones ends up becoming these intelligence services, these intelligence agencies. He's in drag after a play. Okay, they tap him while Matt Damon is in lipstick. That's just how it rolls. And then another one of these encampments, kind of where the Skull and Bones members go afterwards, and the Grove is one of the places, but you don't have to be a Skull and Bonesman to go to the Grove. Deer Island. And in Deer Island, what's happening? It's a bunch of dudes in what are those Hawaii type skirts? Like, those type of skirts, singing and dancing with one another. Forget about when you get to the initiation rituals and you've got the dude dressed up like death and you've got the coffins and you've got members literally pissing on the initiates from the second floor. I'm sure that's all made up. They just wanted to put that in the movie. Sure, it's all made up. In the cool of a limousine or wagon or a local dealer's new loaner, they ride through the beginnings of agriculture country. Small farms, an old orchard, a new vineyard up in landscaped concrete are onto a freeway towards the outskirts of a small city. Before they ever reach the city, they head in a new direction. The road falls level with the countryside again, and the land begins to darken with tones of turned earth, orchard, pasture, and forest. Picking up speed, the cars fly along the ruled line of a 4-lane road towards the thickly wooded hill and light sky that form the western horizon. Somewhere among those hills, in a vast forest preserve, money and power are concentrating at a political and social Fort Knox that promises to contain the very essence of success. Again, the very essence of success. They wind into a wooded country now, through long tunnels of shade, past a vineyard dotted with big, charred stumps. Below hills jagged with thick, straight trees that seem more like monuments or lumber. And they are big. Among the trees, modest summer cottages begin to appear with boats or campers outside instead of farm machines. Now and again, there's an unpainted wooden resort with a neon cocktail sign and a litter of cabins. And there are stretches of seasonal towns, strips of grocery stores, burger joints, real estate offices, and maybe a palmist or someone selling organic food in a failed gas station. How funny is that, talking about organic foods back in the 70s? We're going to come back. We're going to read a little bit more of this. We're going to read the article. Later on, probably closer to the second hour, we're going to be talking about the FBI, Hunter Biden, all that corruption and ridiculousness. That's going to be a focal point of the show today. But the Grove needs to be talked about because the Grove is not being talked about. It's not even being talked about in the alternative media. So we will be back after a word from our sponsor.
Attention Americans, breaking news. Biden's dangerous plan for a digital dollar is underway. Don't be fooled. It won't benefit you. Take action now. The Federal Reserve phased deployment of FedNow began on July 1st, 2023. Be prepared. This may catch many off guard. Your hard-earned assets are in jeopardy. But there's a simple legal tax loophole to opt out of the digital dollar. Reach out to American Alternative Assets for a free wealth protection guide and discover how to safeguard your wealth with gold and silver IRAs against a failing dollar and volatile markets. Visit protectfrombiden.com. This invaluable guide provides precise steps to transfer your IRA or 401k into precious metals without any tax consequences. Be smart. Don't let Biden force you into using the government's new digital dollar. Visit protectfrombiden.com to get your free guide and get started. Again, that's protectfrombiden.com.
All right, we are back. Let's continue on. It is a vacation country that the big good time money has apparently bypassed. There is nothing to catch it here. No posh hotel, no casino or nightclub, no place to ski or berth a boat, no restaurant you can't eat in without a coat, no beach you couldn't simply walk onto and throw down a towel. Overall, the villages and towns have, in sharp contrast to the wooded richness of the countryside, a tacky look, as if a whole financial layer were regularly scraped away like ore from a mountainside and sluiced downstream by the river that parallels the road towards the ocean, toward the Grove. To this out-of-the-way place, at the same time every year, come prominent men like migrating birds from all over the United States, senators and ambassadors, chairmen and chief executive officers, wealthy entertainers, generals, governors, Supreme Court justices, even then, cabinet members, candidates, and office seekers, every Republican president since Coolidge, and every California government but one since Hiram Johnson, acting out a dream of social good fellowship and rustic withdrawal that is part Boy Scout camp, part fraternity beer bust, part officers bivouac, part religious retreat. Wait, part religious retreat? Really? Wow! Part religious retreat? The consummate American annual outdoor tribal rite. The annual Grove encampment of the Bohemian Club. Other less spectacularly famous men come along this road too. San Francisco and Los Angeles bankers, doctors and attorneys, university administrators, and some faculty members from Berkeley, Stanford, Caltech, USC, and UCLA. Ho! You mean like the authoritative sources of today? The academia that tells us to trust the science? Those type of institutions, even then? Weird. How about that? Advertising men, stockbrokers, and upper-level business executives, professional or weekend painters, cartoonists, musicians, actors, and other men with some degree of interest or ability in the arts. The sons of the rich, or men seeking to become adopted sons of the rich, old men seeking peace and community, younger men drawn by the fires of power and fame. Big time book. I'm very tempted now. By the way, I want to go to the bomb, I think. I want to find the chapter on the bomb. I think it's an important one, right? We should probably talk about that because nuclear power here. Nuclear power here. Nuclear power here. The Bomb, Chapter 9. There it is, The Bomb. Okay? On the evening of the Grove Saturday night, there had been another earlier show at Field Circle, preparing the audience for the professional acts that were to follow. Lined along the compact stage, the members of the club band, white-haired trombonists and trumpet men with lean accountant faces, instead of the balloon-swelled and shriveled old brass players, stood blasting an invocation at the three-wall tier of members and guests, who soon were standing, shaking the topmost fawns of the redwoods with the chorus in response. Oh, the Souse family is the best family that ever came over from old Germany. It was not so much a warm-up as a rally, the members allowing themselves to be worked by some of their own and singing with enthusiastically nostalgic accuracy. There's the Lowland Dutch and the Highland Dutch, the Rotterdam Dutch and the goddamn Dutch. The California anthem was next followed by the Stanford anthem, the two sounding interchangeable, like all solemn hailing college songs. At the last band blasted into its climax, the Star-Spangled Banner. Isn't that nice? They love the Star-Spangled Banner. They love the patriotism. And they love their juridic occultic rituals and possibly hanging a man. Now, some people have tried to say that is not real. You see the face covered there. Hand looks pretty real. If you'll notice in the thumbnail, right here at the bottom, there's a bed right here. And that bed is where they lie that person down. And it seems to be a black man, as there are pictures of that. And you have to wonder if maybe they didn't sacrifice an effigy back then in the cremation of care. A ritual which, quote unquote, sets them free. Midsummer sets us free. And that's what they say after they do their little death ritual. And notice they mentioned Germany here. Alex Jones, the person that got in there, would often refer to them as a Germanic death cult. And there is certainly an element to that. I mean, again, this is where the bomb, this is where the bomb was made. You understand that? Let's see. Let's go right down here. Let's see. Where does it start talking about? We got a bunch of scientists here, booze and jokes. But Ernest O. Lawrence, Nobel laureate, co-inventor and developer of the cyclotron, had become, by the time of his death in 1958, the recipient of the greatest honors from the government than any other American scientist. The friend of the rich and the mighty, he dictated appointments at will to the scientific establishment maintained by the Defense Department and the Atomic Energy Commission. Remember, the Department of Energy and the Atomic Energy Commission did horrific experimentation on unknowing U.S. citizens and soldiers, amongst others. We've covered it at length here. We've covered it at length. It's a big deal. Let's continue on. Congress gave him unlimited money for his programs and his laboratory. He was an American scientific philosopher king, the first great physicist who was also a great entrepreneur. So they get into Berkeley and California in the 1920s. And let's see if we can get to the bomb itself, because I think that is extremely important. I want to see if they mention Oppenheimer. Let's see. I see 1946 there. I see 1939. And that might be it right there. Let's read this paragraph. In November of 1939, with Lawrence, ever the operator, was in the midst of the largest fundraising drive in the history of American physics for a new, impractical $100 million volt cyclotron. It was announced in Sweden that he had won the Nobel Prize. He was now the nation's most famous scientist. The University of Texas offered him its presidency, and the trustees at Berkeley gave him $1 million grant. Back in the day, that's huge. Not that $1 million isn't huge now, but can you imagine 80, 90 years ago? My goodness. The slow dribble of physics funds was widening into a stream, and Lawrence was planning the apparatus that would generate power from it. Okay, now they start talking about uranium. And then they talk about, September 1941, after talking with Marcus Oliphant, a British physicist, Lawrence grasped the true priorities of the time. Starting later than the Americans relying on refugee groups, the British had been moving towards the bomb for the past 2 years. Now their money and manpower exhausted, they were offering their data on the condition that American physicists stop working on atomic power plants and medical isotopes and concentrate all their efforts on the construction of a bomb. Oliphant convinced Lawrence that the outcome of the war depended on whether Germany or the United States was the first with the bomb. Bohemian Grove is important for a number of reasons. That is just one of them. All right. I want to read this newer article, and it's the only one that I've seen address the Grove this year. All right. Other than, again, all these hit pieces on Thomas. It's crazy. Like, they'll do these hit pieces on Thomas. Then it's time for the Grove to actually meet. Thomas is probably out there. And it's no. We not reporting. No. This is the place where they hatched the Manhattan Project. No big deal. And the Manhattan Project is the modern modus operandi for black programs, need-to-know programs, and what is known as compartmentalization. So you only know what you need to. You have no idea what the larger scale plan is, and through compartmentalization, you've really been kept in the dark on many of the issues surrounding it. Kind of a big deal. When news broke in April that the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has for decades accepted extravagant travel gifts from the Republican billionaire Harlan Crow, the Washington Post reported that Thomas had also been a guest of Crow during the annual encampment of the Bohemian Club. The secretive club's motto, "Weaving spiders come not here," hangs over the entrance to the Bohemian Grove. The 2,700-acre Redwood estate situated alongside the Russian River near Monte Rio. Club members and their guests greet the sign with a wink. It is well documented that for decades, these men, the club admits only men, have gathered at the Grove to strengthen anchoring threads of socioeconomic supremacy. Today, those threads are largely spun by men like Harlan Crow. I am well familiar with the Bohemian Grove. My 19th century ancestors owned and logged 1,100 acres of virgin redwood along the lower Russian River, eventually selling 200 acres of cutover land to the Bohemian Club to expand the Grove. During the 1980s, I worked as a reporter in my hometown of Guerinville. My house stood just a half mile away. During the off-season, I enjoyed long runs through the Bohemian Grove, though I'd slow to a stroll at the Grove's 100-acre stand of virgin redwood. This is the largest remaining dot of ancient forest standing alongside the Russian River, whose banks were once coated in 100,000 acres of virgin redwood. And if you've never stood next to a redwood tree, it is humbling. It is humbling. You're like, whoa, man, this is huge. This is a big time. Okay? And number one, there's just something about being connected to nature and inside of nature. But when you're up against something that is just so large and in my opinion, awe-inspiring, it's something else. It's something else. So we're about to take a break. I want you to thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. One more segment after this break. In the first hour, I want to remind people the second hour is over at rvmrumble.com. That's RVM RVMRumble.com. And you can support the broadcast through redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. We're promising two exclusive interviews over this weekend as we do it to it. And I've got somebody in mind. I was scheduling it yesterday. I got to make sure it's going to happen, Captain, but you will definitely get those 2 interviews, and we want to thank you for going premium and helping support the broadcast. We'll be back after a word from our sponsor.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets, sleepwear, dog beds.
Whoa, Charles. Everyone now can get MyPillow products at huge discounts at MyPillow.com. That's right. Now's the time to go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our 3-in-1 sale. We're bringing you exciting new products, overstock specials, and closeout deals you won't find anywhere else. For example, when you buy one of our brand new MyPillow 2.0s, you get another one absolutely free. And with our overstock sale, you save 50% on our luxurious Giza Dream bed sheets. That's as low as $29.99 for the best sheets ever. And with our biggest closeout special, you get our all-season slippers for only $35. Or our sandals and slides for just $25. Quantities are limited, and once they're gone, they're gone.
So, I've got this clip that I want to play because, number one, Nick Bryant is one of the best independent journalists out there. He was a mainstream journalist for the longest of times. And what's really interesting about Nick is when he got into investigating, quote unquote, Satanism, he got into investigating the finders, the political elite, and one of the victims, Paul Bonacci. It's not gone over in this clip, and actually it was something that I discussed with him after we talked for 20 minutes after the interview. I should have just kept it rolling. We talked about the Bohemian Club in particular and Bonacci's story, which is extremely dark, and how it's attached here. Okay, so I just want to note that Nick Bryant, who just started EpsteinJustice.com with a bunch of the victims, the guy who published or got the Black Book published when nobody wanted to publish it, Gawker published it for him, also has a tale in which the Franklin scandal, which you'll hear about a little bit right now, and the Predator class cover-up, talks about one of the darkest stories. When I read the initial John DeCamp book of this thing, I had to put the book down. I felt nauseated and sick to my stomach. And again, it was supposedly taking place at the Bohemian Grove. Whether that's true or not, I couldn't tell you. But what I can tell you is that this interview right now, available at redvoicemedia.com/uncensored with Nick Bryant, is a powerful one, and it's one that is totally worth your time. A lot of people are just waking up that there's an element to the FBI and the Department of Justice that is a criminal element that covers up for this predator class, and they're outside of the law. You know, now a lot of people are pointing to the Hunter Biden laptop, the FBI whistleblowers, the Joe Biden kickbacks case. All of this has been inbuilt. You know, you mentioned, obviously, Lawrence King, who seems to be at the pinnacle of this ring, but his connections in right-wing politics, Republican politics in particular, were enormous. He actually sang the national anthem at the RNC.
At the 1984 Republican convention. He put on parties for Reagan when Reagan was nominated, and then he put on parties for Bush when Bush was nominated. And the Green Committee at one of the parties for Bush, I think there was Alexander Haig and Jack Kemp. Jack Kemp was a famous representative, famous football player. Alexander Haig was a famous general. And I believe that Gerald Ford might have been one. So King had connections to the highest level of the Republican Party. And all of this doesn't really make any sense. Why is the FBI in Nebraska covering up for some pedophiles in Nebraska? It doesn't make any sense that they would do all of this to cover up. But you have to understand the DC side of Franklin. And the DC side was His name is Craig Spence. He's a power broker. He's very much like Epstein. He was a power broker. He was a CIA asset, very much like Epstein. And he had a beautiful house in the Kalorama section of DC, which is a very affluent section. And it was wired for audiovisual blackmail. And they would have parties there. Some of the parties would just be straight out orgies with the kids. But then there would be other parties. I mean, if Spence had he had like a hotline to Mount Olympus. He had amazing connections. And he would have these parties that would be straight political parties. It would be people in the administration, senators, representatives, captains of industry, and people in the media. And they would start out like as a straight political party, and people would get lubricated on alcohol. And then maybe around 10 or 11, something would happen, like someone would, something sexually inappropriate would happen. Somebody would fire up a joint, someone break out a line of coke. And then the people that wanted no part of that would split. But then the people that wanted part of it, if they stayed, they were blackmailed. And with Jeffrey Epstein, I want to finish the thought on Spence. So with Gary Caradori, if he would have brought those pictures back to Nebraska, that would have proven absolutely that Lawrence E. King and Craig Spence were running Interstate Pedophile Network. The dominoes would have started falling. And that those dominoes would have fallen all the way to Nebraska, and it would have jeopardized Bush ones.
And specifically on Spence, it was the receipts that were published that proved that there were financial transactions that led all the way back to that political elite in the White House. And again, that was on the cover of the Washington Times at that time.
Get the whole story on Red Voice Media Premium using the link below, completely uncensored and ad-free.
Please consider supporting the broadcast. That's how we do's it. That whole interview is up there right now for free. And my interview with Chad Lavrow, January 6th, still a hot topic, especially now they're indicting the former president of the United States, calling him an insurrectionist when there was no insurrection. Absolutely no insurrection. No pitchforks, no death, no overtaking the government, nothing like that at all. No. To better understand how business and politics gel beneath this towering canopy, consider events nearly a century ago. The Grove is divided into several cutely named camps. One such camp, Pleasant Isle of Aves, was largely populated by regents of the University of California. A collegiate camp in the Redwoods might at first glance seem like an unlikely place to find world-dominating capitalists. Yet, during this time, every UC regent was a business titan. There were no exceptions. The regents included not a single academic, not even so much as a school teacher, to help guide education policies of the West's premier academic institutions. The regents' role was to mine the university's best minds to fuel the growth of an economic empire. Typical of the group, says William H. Crocker. Crocker joined the Bohemian Club in the late 19th century, and he served as president of the Regents from 1926 until his death in 1937. Crocker, like Harlan Crow, frequently brought influential guests and guests he wanted to influence to the Bohemian Club's annual July encampment. Crocker had inherited a boundless compass of assets from his father, Charles Crocker, a Big Four founder of the Central Pacific Railroad, which built the western half of the nation's first transcontinental railroad, and the Southern Pacific Corp by 1920. Crocker was the president and majority shareholder of 11 major corporations and a director of 24 others. Damn! He controlled municipal water systems, real estate through the country, electricity production and distribution, hydroelectric power, steel production, irrigation, real estate development, telephone companies, railroads, rich lands, coal and gravel extraction, oil wells and refineries, cement plants, life insurance, flour production, and mining of numerous metals, and minerals. Huh, how about all that? Pretty influential. It's not just a club, okay? This is where power brokers meet. This is the real deal. Again, no media coverage whatsoever. We're spending an hour on it here because this might be the only hour that you hear about this summer or this year. Just pointing that out. In 1932, UC President Robert Gordon Sproul approached Crocker for a donation on behalf of the Ernest Orlando Lawrence. What we were just talking about, a nuclear physicist engaged in building cyclotrons at UC. Sprout was seeking funding to build a much bigger, more impactful cyclotron for medical research. Crocker asked Sproul how much was needed. Sproul later wrote, "I told Mr. Crocker I believe $75,000 would cover it. And 30 minutes later, I was back on the ferry boat with a check for that amount in my pocket. Today, about $75K would be $1.5 million. The program didn't stop at medical research. On September 15, 1942, Lawrence and the rest of the Uranium Committee, codenamed S1, of the U.S. Office of Scientific Research and Development, met at the Bohemian Grove Clubhouse. During their meeting, the Uranium Committee launched the Manhattan Project and its progeny, the world's first nuclear weapons. Bum, bum, bum. Told you. Harlan Crow is the latest incarnation of the classic American industrial oligarch. He has donated millions to right-wing organizations, among them Liberty Central, Virginia Thomas's far-right activist organization. Virginia Thomas worked behind the scenes to support the January 6, 2020 Capitol insurrection. So you got a lefty talking about this. Far right. Look, it's not about right and left. It's about right and wrong, and I'm sorry. I'm sick of hearing organizations that tell you the truth about January 6th that's far right. I'm sick of hearing that I'm far right. I'm so not far right. I mean, again, who's been talking about the Bush family now? I've been talking about them for almost 2 decades. 2 decades. Exposing the Clintons as well. Why? Because corruption is corruption, okay? And murder is murder, okay? And really, an establishment that wants to push a great narrative in front of us and then behind the scenes do the exact opposite of what they're saying, that's a problem, despite political party. Today at the Bohemian Grove, Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas can easily chat out of the public eye with any number of wealthy, influential Americans and dedicate themselves to weaving extreme economic and ideological webs of control. Clarence Thomas may not be developing weapons that would destroy the world, but he and Virginia Thomas are wielding the weaponized funding and influence of people like Crow. Together, their work threatens to roll back several important and long-standing protections of American rights. Under the current court, according to the Center for American Progress, Americans will likely see significant retrenchments of their rights, including those to clean air. That's such bullshit. Religious freedom, also bullshit. Effective governance, bullshit. And to live in the safe from the scourge of gun violence, bullshit. But the rights of an exclusive members of the Bohemian Grove and their friends will remain serene or uninterrupted. Yeah, those guys have all sorts of security and guns. You should too. The scourge of gun violence. Come on, man. Come on, man. Just partisan politics everywhere when this isn't a partisan issue. But to Greg King, his credit, only article out there. That's it. If you think I'm kidding you, we'll do a search right now. You know what? Let's do a DuckDuckGo because everybody knows that Google's garbage, and it is. But we'll just type in Bohemian Grove and this. We'll go to their news over here. All right? And that's it. That's it. Otherwise, we're looking at 36 days ago. All right, 32 days ago. We'll go for any time. Let's go within the past week. Past week. No. Again, Orange County Register. Nope. Nope. I mean, it's just not there. Everything's about Clarence Thomas. Nobody's really. It's Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas. And even that article was there. What's this? The long, strange influence of conspiracy theories on U.S. politics. Let's check this out. Okay, this is July 13th. And let's see if they, Under the Eye of Power, Colin Dickey. I don't know. Ghostland. Let's hit the continue reading. Let's see if the Grove's in here. There it is. Let's see what they have to say. But we're going to have to see what we have to say on the other side of this word from our sponsor. We'll be back in just one moment over on YouTube. Then I'm going to tell you where you can find the rest of the broadcast.
We love the internet, but the internet is tracking everything you do. Take control of your online privacy with IPVanish. People with malicious intent are everywhere, watching you. Criminals can hack your Wi-Fi, while broadband providers and advertisers monitor your data. With IPVanish on your device, your internet activity is encrypted. No one can see what you're doing. Your location, your connection, completely hidden. Protect your internet privacy today with IPVanish.
All right, this is the end of the first hour. You want the second hour, it's over at rvmrumble.com, rvmrumble.com. We're going to read this paragraph right here about conspiracy theories. Oh, the Bohemian Grove's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory. So YouTube, you know where to find us. I hope that you're following us on all the other social media platforms outside of YouTube, especially because YouTube has really throttled the reach. Over the last 5 years, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And it is a platform controlled by the media military industrial complex and really just a Trojan horse civilian system of the great narrative. So YouTube, we will see you all on